Hi, and welcome to the Willow Kids podcast, a space where curiosity is nurtured, creativity is encouraged, and learning is treated as a lifelong adventure. At Willow Kids, we believe children thrive when education goes beyond memorization, when it invites wonder, builds confidence, and honors each child's unique rhythm of growth. In this podcast, we explore how kids learn best, hear from inspiring educators and parents, and share ideas that support thoughtful, joyful learning in academics, the arts, and life. Whether you're a parent, educator, or lifelong learner, we're glad you're here. Let's grow strong minds and kind hearts together. My name is Caitlin. I have a background in child and adolescent development and mental health counseling, and I'm here with Danielle Kilgore.
Hello, happy to be here. And I'm Danielle Kilgore, and my background is in early childhood development, where I've been a teacher in the classroom for 16 years, and a lover of early childhood, all things.
Well, super happy that you're here with us. Before we get into today's topic, I just want to put out our little announcement. We have a pilot for tutoring in Calabasas. We're very excited to share that Willow Kids is officially launching its tutoring pilot program in Calabasas, California. This pilot is designed for families who want something more thoughtful and personalized than traditional tutoring. It's an approach that supports academic growth while nurturing curiosity, confidence, and genuine love of learning. If you're a parent in or around Calabasas and interested in learning more, we invite you to visit www.willow.kids to explore the program, see what we're building, and sign up for updates. Spots for the pilot are limited, and we're excited to grow this community together from the ground up. Visit www.willow.kids, and thank you for being part of the Willow Kids journey. Now, for today's episode, we are going to talk about how parents can help kids build real friendships. Building real friendships is not an easy thing, especially when you're a kiddo. So kids don't struggle with friendships because there's something wrong with them. They struggle because friendship skills are learned through practice, and many children today have fewer chances to practice real connection. So I kind of wanted to start it off and ask Danielle a question. So why do many kids, in your opinion, struggle to make or keep friends, even when they're kind, smart, and well-intentioned?
As you mentioned, making friends is a hard thing. It's a challenge, and they are skills just like anything else that needs to be learned and practiced. And I think, and people are all different. So that's another thing that is, you're working with as a child, as a person, when you're trying to become friends. It's sort of back and forth balancing of the other person as well. And that's not easy to do. And so I think it takes a lot of practice. But those skills, being armed with kindness, and the ability to share and cooperate, those are all great skills that will certainly serve in making friends. But it doesn't honestly always make it easier, because the just relationships in general are difficult and challenging. And so when you're just a new being and young and figuring it all out, that can be very, very difficult, in spite of having all the desire or the skills or being kind. It's still just a practice and give and take, and learning how to interact with different people. And it does take, I think, continual practice and modeling as well.
Yeah, that is absolutely true. There's so much learning that a kid has to go through, and a lot of kids these days aren't seeing that anymore.
Yeah. Absolutely. Our social, and with COVID and everything, our social dynamic and the social, environment is very, very different. And so I think even that's an even added challenge for young children nowadays. And you have so many, who missed out on that. Usually with the young children, that's the big thing, right? Parents are like, oh, play dates. And that's what people encourage, have play dates. That's how they learn. That's how they learn to share. And a lot of that with COVID then went away, understandably, and had to. And I think we're just now honestly starting to see the effects of that in terms of social development, in the classroom. And I noticed that actually within the classroom last year, that social skills, while it's always an important focus, but it took a lot more time and a lot more emphasis. And there were a lot more children who kind of struggled with those social skills than I've seen in the past. And so I think we are starting to just kind of now see the effects of that. And then as children get older, it's devices and screens, and that's new. And that has very much changed social dynamics and social interactions, making it, really incredibly challenging these days, with whole other obstacles. And because they're kind of new for parents as well. If parents grew up at a time where they didn't have those, they weren't navigating those kinds of social dynamics and skills. They're learning as well. and not sure how to do it. So you have then a lot of people, you have both adults and young children and young kids and young youth who are trying to figure out how we interact now in what is our current and present social context.
Absolutely,
Oh,
it's a multifold between social aspects, pandemic, the aftermath of the pandemic, and you're right, the technology really plays a role. I actually wanted to show this study that we had. It's from a Harvard study, and it shows us that, you know, a lot of our early relation health is an emerging division. And so you have parents that are constantly interacting with their infants and toddlers. And another aspect that folds into why kids are having a hard time is parents aren't home as much or they're not as interactive as much because we have this technology or this higher demand. So just so our readers, our viewers can see, this is part of our study that we found out in Harvard. A little more background in that as well. But as Danielle was saying, so much of it is coming at us, and we're expected to be able to navigate all of this without it impacting anybody. But the truth is, we don't know its impact quite yet, and we're just now seeing it.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because it takes time. It does. It takes time to kind of see those effects and see what is going on. And you're right. That is a key factor is you do have so many parents who either have to work, so both are out of the home. And so again, also children might be with babysitters or with grandparents, and not getting as much of the interaction or the one-on-one or the back and forth. And certainly, yes, you're right. The screen has become definitely also a way to where children are spending more time interacting with that than they are with caregivers and parents often.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to keep going just because these are all great points, and I just want to make sure we get to all of our points that we would like to talk about. Um, so, Jenna, I also want to ask you, why do you feel um, that social confidence really isn't developing automatically as children are getting older?
Well, I think, one thing I think that's beautiful is that we almost start off with more confidence, right? When we're younger, right?
Yes.
That's why I love preschool age and teaching that age because they're so excited about everything, discovering what they can do and look what I can do. And they think they're wonderful and amazing as they should. And that is something that we also obviously with young children work to encourage. Look at what you
Mhm.
can do. And we do spend a lot of time just doing that. And they're so naturally they take us there, right? There's so much pride in what they do and they're comfortable and just be and discovering. And there's not all the little thoughts and the influences yet, right?
Yes.
So we start off being, I think, far more confident. And then as we get older, unfortunately, I think we have more of those interactions. We start to develop more of an awareness of thoughts of what people are thinking about us and what people think. And we don't want people to think about us in bad ways or the wrong way, or we're afraid of what people might think. So then we don't do, maybe we're not as big and, open and just go for it as possible because we start to get all these messages from other peers as we get older, especially in the classroom. And also, I think, as adults, as we grow, we start getting these more messages, unfortunately, that I think tend to dim our light, sadly, and not shine as brightly. And so I think, with the influence, obviously of peers, and you have, peers who see different things at home or different things socially, and so that affects how they interact with others and what children are hearing. I also think that social media for those older children and getting on screens and seeing all these things is hugely detrimental to self-confidence because you see an image of what maybe you're supposed to look like or what you're supposed to be doing. And it starts younger and younger. And I was actually just listening to a study about with you sort of middle schoolers and young children and those get ready with me videos that
Yes.
they do and target and how that is actually just all advertisement that they're targeting at these young children and young girls under the guise of, oh, get ready with me. But it's, oh, you need this and you need this and you need to have
Mhm.
this. And this is what I do. And so all of those things, when you're being bombarded with those messages, unfortunately, I think start to take over. And that's where confidence, it starts to diminish. And so it does become really important as we get older for educators of older children, for parents in terms of, social media and interaction, being able to teach them how to navigate that and have that confidence and those connections. That's where that relationship, right, is really strong and key. So we want to build those early because that actually will help help carry you through. If they have those strong relationships where they know they have that safety, they have that connection, they have that love, then that really helps to kind of boost that and carry that as they go on. And there tends to be more, unfortunately, messages or interactions that can really sort of dampen that confidence rather than boost it.
Yeah, you have so many things going on and coming at you that you're right. Kids start out with so much confidence because they don't know the better. They're like, "Yeah, I'm
Exactly.
super amazing. I'm great." Like, they are getting that constant praise in most situations where they're just coming in as like, "I got this. I'm amazing. I can do it." And then you're introduced to school and you have a kiddo who might knock the other one down, and social media says this or the teacher does that, and so you're right. It's not automatically going, and developing as you get older. In fact, it's actually being affected more and more.
Absolutely. And that's why we have those. I think, when you're young, you have that feeling just being, I am enough. Just being me, just being here, I'm amazing. Just for
Yes.
being. And that I think really gets diminished. And that's why, you hear it over and over as adults. I am enough. You are enough. And we need to actually be reminded of like, oh, wait, we don't need to do this or accomplish this or be able to have this or that to be enough. We just are for being. We're amazing just as human beings and creatures. And I think that, yeah, sadly, that as we get older, it's sort of more messages and more influence kind of our brain starts to pick up those more and we lose that just natural of like, oh, I'm just going to be and I just am wonderful for being and whatever I do is wonderful. And so you're right. I think then it becomes, to have these systems of support are super vital to kind of counteract and be able to navigate those challenges with a strong foundation of relational skills and positive interactions and interpersonal skills to help carry through those times where we certainly are going to get knocked down and our confidence certainly gets knocked down over
Yes.
and over. So that resilience and ability to be like, oh, okay, well, I'm still okay. I'm still great. Is key.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that the resilience needs to be taught. It's not one of those things that you can just expect a kiddo to hold on to, and so that's a great point that
Absolutely.
you brought up. And then so why do you think now, knowing this in the background and needing to know that your confidence needs to constantly be worked on, it's not automatically gonna stay super strong. What do you think that modern schedules and screens and adult-led environments kind of reduce the opportunity for kids to practice these friendship skills?
Absolutely. I think that we definitely have a lot of cases of overscheduling and being involved in too many things and the importance of downtime and just that
Mhm.
free kind of natural interactions and explorations are super valuable. And you're right. It doesn't happen a lot. And even in schools, right? Nowadays, more and more because it's like, oh, we got to go to this class and then we're moving to this and then we're moving to this and then we're moving to this. So even that, even in early childhood classrooms,
Mhm.
sadly, I feel like less and less children have the time to just interact naturally on their own, right? Everything rather than, okay, we're doing this and now we're moving to this and now we're moving to this, and meeting those and, oh, we should do music class and then we got to go to sports and we got to go to soccer. And really, I think it's an overstimulation and children they're getting these skills, but then if they don't have an opportunity to actually put them into practice, right, they don't get solidified. Right.
Exactly.
So that's part of that learning, right? We learn by seeing, but then we know that it's reinforced by doing. And then that social back and forth really is what kind of concretes the learning in for us. And so when we're so overly scheduling them and having them be in all these structures, then we're not allowing the time for the skills that we're trying to put in them to actually be put in and locked into place. Because they're not having a chance to actually naturally practice it in a very real life, real way. And so you're right. That scheduling is taking away from that, and you're not allowing them. And I think sometimes parents go, "Well, I have them in this, and they're in all these social things. Why aren't it?" Well, because then they need that downtime to then take in all that learning, everything they're getting, and put it
Yes.
into their body and into kind of to get it into their brain wiring. And I think even in the study, they talked about how even adults in that interaction and relationship, right, with children, our brains actually get sort of remodeled. I think they referred to that housing, building the house. And so it's a remodeling that we gain by all those interactions with children, and that back and forth from them. And so if we're not allowing them to have that back and forth, then that learning is not being solidified and they're not gaining really any of those skills.
Exactly, and you see that in so many child and adolescent studies that children are being shown how to do all these things, but it's not there's no room for practice. Not a single thing, whether it's they're watching through the television and there's not an actual person to practice with. Parents are being like, "No, you need to go do this, you need to go do this," and but there's no one to do it with because everyone's attached to an iPad or a tablet, and you also have that, and so with all of these things going on constantly, you don't have, as you said, there's no opportunities, and, I'm currently raising a young child, and something that I'm learning in my day-to-day experience is there's no point to make a happy baby happier. You shouldn't make a happy kid happier. So why are we making children from the ages of 6 months all the way to 18, why do we need to constantly make sure they're doing something? That just completely diminishes all of the things that they're trying to get done and, like, learning those friendship skills and learning how to navigate out as their own person even.
Absolutely. Yep. All of those things they need to have challenges that they navigate. And I think that's another thing when we're here and we're on a schedule and this, we take away a lot of, we do a lot because it's like, okay, wait, we got to go. And so then we're not giving them that opportunity to struggle, that opportunity to fail. And that's
Mhm.
where the resilience comes in. And so if you're not giving them that, then you're not giving them, again, that opportunity or practice to build that resilience, which is going to be vital as they take on more challenges and things get more challenging. And so we're missing that component. And then, it can be built, but it gets harder. It gets harder to build
Yes.
later, right? And when you're in it, it gets a lot harder. And so that's why it's key that foundation, that building of the house we start with from the beginning. We need to
Yeah.
lay that foundation, and especially in early childhood, that's those social emotional skills, right? That emotional intelligence is the foundation for everything else.
Yes.
Everything else. I think sometimes, even those who have not studied child development or don't have as deep an understanding don't realize that everything, I mean, our cognitive skills, the ability to be able to problem solve math, all comes from having a solid basis first of our social emotional foundation, right? And being able to navigate because you need all those that emotional intelligence, those soft skills, as they refer to be able to then actually build more complex understanding abilities.
Yes, exactly. So then what are the core skills that children need to build real friendships? Skills that aren't taught directly in school.
Absolutely. And, I think the early childhood world does a great job of it because we have that focus just naturally of where they're at in their development. That those emotional, those social emotional skills, right? Those interpersonal skills, our ability to communicate, listen. So those language to be able to say what we want or need, but also the importance of listening, right? To be able to listen to our friends and listen to what they're saying or what they're asking. Cooperation, teamwork, right? Those are things that how do we work together? How can we share those foundational skills? How can we, work out conflict through problem solving, right? Because conflict's going to happen
Mhm.
when you play. Sometimes your friend's not going to want to build what you want to build, or they're not going to want to pretend the same thing. So that ability to be able to cooperate and share and also to adapt. You do have to be very adaptable, right? To be in relationships because you can't control other people. And that's a big thing, right? So you got to be able to adapt. Like you might have in your mind as a little, I want to play this game and you're going to be the monster and and that might not work out. Then you've got the other person saying, no, that's not what I want to do. And so adaptability is a big one there. And obviously empathy. Empathy is a big one. And we talk about that just being able to have that understanding that sometimes people might not feel right or might not feel good. And to have that, we should, want to make sure that they're okay and care for them. So be able to empathize with them is a big one, obviously, especially in relationships. And so it's all of everything that we need to be able to interact with one another. And in the preschool classroom, that's the huge focus because generally, a lot of times, oftentimes, it's the first experience for children to be in a setting like that where they have a bunch of people that suddenly they have to be able to work with and navigate with. And it's different from home. So that early childhood classroom is the first kind of social experience outside of home, right? And we all know home and family is very different as it should be. Our home space, we can be different at home, and we should be able to, and we can be different, with our family members. And so for early childhood, when we get in the classroom, it's a whole new world. This is a whole new thing we have to navigate. And now we have all these things that don't belong to you. They're here for everyone. And we
Yep.
need to be able to, all of those. So I think in the early childhood classroom, we do a beautiful job of focusing on building those skills because it's super important and they're new. They're brand new. This is the
Mhm.
first time navigating anything like this. So obviously, it's a huge focus for us. Sadly, I think that we tend to lose it as children get older, the emphasis on the emotional side, the social emotional side, and those vital skills, because then it becomes more about the academic and with the testing and what do we got? And we got this project and we got to do this test. And we tend to oftentimes lose that social emotional focus. And I know now we're recognizing, and especially with COVID, which had a huge impact, I know that teachers of older children obviously are also seeing. So I think now there is this big push and understanding that, hey, the social emotional learning needs to continue, and that's a big part of it, if not even a bigger part as we get older and navigate more negative messages maybe coming in, or influences, or not being as good at math, or drawing, or whatever it is, and we start to get more in our head about that. So even more so, I think those social emotional skills, that confidence, like you said, that ability to be resilient are even more important. And I think we are seeing now, but we kind of have lost focus on that. But I think we're seeing now that it's super important. And we're having children who are not doing as well, who are not going to be able to learn well because they don't have that emotional aspect, that social emotional aspect, and they need that. We need to deal with, experiences that they've had, and all the things that children deal with, and who knows what's happening in different homes and environments, and a parent loses a job, and or whatever it is, or a parent gets sick, or someone in the family illness. I mean, you have all of these experiences, as in the report that we referred to, the adverse childhood experiences, and all of those are very much impacting children. And it's that emotional piece that can kind of help to sort of maybe mediate, or provide some cushion for that. I mean, trauma and experiences happen, and obviously they're going to have an effect, but it's about having, that enough positive to kind of balance that out, so that they children can be resilient and recover and heal from trauma.
Yeah. No, you're
Oh,
completely right, and the study that I shared earlier, the Harvard study, actually emphasizes that. It literally is saying simple, everyday human interactions are the essential building blocks of early relational help. It That's truly what it is they're expecting us as people to interact with each other, and you brought up a great point. Because of COVID, we lost so much of that, and because kids lost so much, it wasn't just 2 weeks, it was, like, 2 years that kids completely lost it, and a lot of these kids are going through major social milestones, and now they've completely missed it, which completely messed up their development, and so now they're
absolutely.
realizing that, as we are going through and we are coming back from the pandemic and we're learning to reintegrate with humans, that these children miss these huge milestones. And that's why this social emotional that you brought up is so important, because we're now having to go back and kind of teach them instead of letting it be natural, because they were on a computer for 2 years. So there's nothing natural about that anymore.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right. Absolutely. Yeah. And this last year in the classroom, one thing I noted, I had multiple students, and this was the first time I had ever experienced this. I had at least two students who had really, really strong signs of like social anxiety, at age 3 and 4. And I had not ever experienced that. And it was new for me to see and realize, like, just the not being so overwhelmed by being in a classroom, in a group with lots of people, and that took like probably a month or two before they even would speak in the classroom. And I had, I mean, just quiet, and just, and that was really an eye opener for me to see, okay, to, like you said, these residual effects, and see, I see what's
Mhm.
happening, because normally children, they're used to seeing, and they're usually, as we said, pretty confident. They'll come into a new
Yes.
situation, or new. And so it was very, very eye opening for me to see 3 and 4-year olds just really, nope,
Mhm.
really take a lot longer to feel safe and to feel comfortable and okay, you
Yeah,
know?
so then that brings me to the point, so then if they're missing out so much, so now what role do everyday relationships with adults and adults playing to help with kids learn their empathy, learn communication, and learn their emotional awareness?
Absolutely. I think one of the biggest things obviously is modeling is the way that children learn. So a lot of modeling. And so when they see you or when they hear you interact with them in certain ways or have conversations, you are modeling for them what a social interaction looks like.
Mhm.
When someone brings you something, you say, "Oh, thank you so much." You're modeling for them kind of these little social skills, how we interact with people. And when you are interacting with them, it's a chance also you're modeling. "Oh, are you" when they fall down, those little, "Oh, are you okay?" "Oh, let me see, is everything okay? Oh, I'm glad you're okay." Those just that simple is you're showing and you're modeling what it means to have empathy, what it means to show concern or care for someone and the kinds of words we can use. When you play with them or you're having, "Oh, should we build?" And you can even if they're not, "Oh, is it okay? Can I use this blue one?" There you're modeling, even though you don't necessarily, you're working, you don't need, but that is what you are showing them and interacting. And there you're building all of these skills because they're soaking everything in. So every word, every moment, every action, I mean, they are
Yes.
watching you. The number of times I have parents who tell me, my child sounds like you at home because they would hear me in the classroom and they'd start saying, I say, "Oh man," a lot. And those, they at home would start going, "Oh man." And their parents would be like, "Where did that come from?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's me. That is me." But so I mean, all of those, whatever I said to them, the way I spoke to them, or the way, in conflict, or if they get upset, "Oh, you're modeling, you're narrating, oh, are you upset? Did that upset you? I'm sorry. I'm sorry you're upset.
Yes.
Can I make you feel better? Would you like a hug? Do you need a stuffy?" Those are you're building again that social, self-regulation, those emotions. You're giving every interaction is teaching, because they're observing everything. So all of those, the way you speak to them, and so not speaking to them, not having is
Mhm.
impacted. They're picking up on that as well. Oh, I don't get
Absolutely.
attention. All of those things, every little thing they are picking up on. And so every adult in a child's life, every interaction that they have really is super important. And those are
Mhm.
all opportunities. Those are all teachers, those are all moments. And sometimes they have those moments where we don't want them to see, but that happens as well. But it's all of those interactions are really, really what are shaping their social understanding.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely, Danielle. Like
Yeah.
modeling, and I'm very happy you used the word modeling because that's exactly what it is. You're modeling and you're shaping what you're expecting from these children, whether you are the educator or the parent or the aunt, whatever it is, whatever role you are playing, you are modeling all of these things. So then what happens when kids don't get enough chances to practice handling conflict, handling rejection, or understanding group dynamics? What happens then?
Absolutely. Then I think often you see, then they don't know what to do.
Mhm.
Right. So when the conflict comes up, you see these very big reactions are huge and not knowing what to deal with it. And they're not knowing how to calm down, not knowing how to be resilient or how to adapt. It's completely derailing. So these little experiences that, they should be, like you said, have the practice of, oops, we did it, learn from and try it out. If they're not having that, then they don't know how to do it. And so then these interactions happen and they're completely dysregulated. They don't know what is going on. And when those of us who we've been around children, when you are dysregulated, there's really not a whole lot you can do. Right. Because everything is going on. All you're doing is feeling this. And that's when you might have, these huge breakdowns or meltdowns or tantrums, or you can't bring, or a child who you can't bring down, and sometimes you'll see that a child who over little things gets really, really upset and there is no bringing them down. It's,
Mhm.
because again, they haven't had a chance to practice these self-regulation skills or ability to be like, "Oh, I'm feeling this, but okay, I know what to do, or I've done this to feel better. Right. And so it becomes a much more intense interaction,
Mhm.
which of course is much stressful for then everyone involved. Then the adults or the caretakers are stressed because when you're dealing with a high level of intensity and stress, then obviously, again, relating relations back and forth, then you're picking up on that, then you're heightened. And then it's this back and forth of high intensity and dysregulation, and that's not good for anyone. And so those skills, being able to cry and have a breakdown, get frustrated, get upset, those are all important things to have happen, because so that we can practice those things, that all are a part of these social interactions. We can't avoid it, right? And we are social beings. None of us are isolated. None of us are meant to be isolated. And so we it's a huge disservice to have little ones that we're raising to be social beings not know how to be social beings.
Yes.
And that is truly problematic, because we all have to live together, and work together. And I think in many ways we are seeing, even in the adult world, right, what happens when we tend to be so intense and dysregulated, and can't think to interact, how to that back and forth, and how do we cooperate, and how do we adapt, and how do we listen to one another.
Yeah, absolutely. The social practice is just being lost across the board. And it is starting with our younger generation, but you do see it in everybody. You see it in your workplace, but you see it in your teenagers and your younger kids. And so,
Absolutely.
yeah. Where do you think is the most vital for those kids to get that social practice? Is it in the home? Is it at school?
I think vital is in the home, because that is the first place. And as I think it was also mentioned in our article, and one of the doctors was quoted as saying that you are, as a parent, right, you are your child's favorite toy, right? Everything about you, they're learning from your voice, your facial expressions. They want everything. They want that. So I think that is where it starts, because also that's home base, right? That is where you go. And I think that is the most vital. But then I think it is a multi-tiered system of support that we need, right? Because as it also talks about in the article, that we read in the Harvard study, that it takes a village, right, to raise a child. So again, no, you should not be doing it in isolation, and you're not doing it in isolation, because you exist also in this society, and you have neighbors, and you have all the things, and so really we do need to think about the fact that, like, every adult is should be a part of raising this child, right?
Yes.
In every interaction, even if it's a little, even if it's shorter interactions, even if it's once a week, but every interaction, you are a part of raising any child. And so I think it does need to go beyond the home. Obviously, when they go out in school, you have the caregivers, your early childhood, whether it's, in preschool teachers, to that first beginning, experience of that social context outside of home and away from family members. Super important. Obviously, they're in school because that's the foundation for them at school, where they're now about to spend a lot of years. Right. So that obviously is also super vital. And then, but then it continues, and it should go outside also, in terms of care, in terms of the interactions they have, like it mentions the article, with their doctors. Every interaction is really, really important. And I think obviously outside of home, we need to have some very key social supports and services, because of this being in a social society, and because it is hard, and because it is challenging, and because there are so many things that impact us. But I do believe that really at home is where it starts, and is vital. And so I think that the support needs to start there. From the moment we're born in the hospital, I think it would be great if we knew that there was this support system that was going to be in place. We
Yes.
had, right? Because when we all start, we all know nothing. It's all
Yes.
brand new, and it is kind of terrifying. Then they send you home with this life, and they're like, okay, here you go.
Say good
And you're
luck,
like,
and then
wait.
yeah, and you don't know anything, and now you're having to learn while this baby's trying to learn, and now you want your support system, but you also have to make sure everyone's on the same page because you wanna make sure
Yes.
everyone's learning the same thing at the same time too.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and so with home being the most vital place, where do you think children's daily lives, Where do you think the opportunities for unstructured peer interaction is probably shrinking the most?
That's true. That's true because like you said, people aren't having play dates, they're not interacting as much. I think we're starting maybe to get back to that a little bit. I know, but so it does a lot of times then come at home, right? So you got to kind of have those, those opportunities if you can to kind of build in to have some play interaction with your child. And hopefully, some families are fortunate. You might have other children and family members and other children who are the same age. And obviously that's super helpful as well and beneficial because then you have opportunity again to kind of practice those skills, interacting and sharing and playing together in that safety of that first phase of home. Right. And so, those interactions need to happen. They're super important, or even with grandparents, but just like being able to interact with them. And that's a different way to gain empathy and understanding because then you have different ages, right? Or then you start to understand the older people and younger people, just like children learn that with babies, we need to be gentle and kind, if they have that opportunity. Then also, with grandmas and grandpas, sometimes also we need to be different and, gentle so all of those interactions, just spending time, I think is huge. And also impacted at home, you're right, because as you met, a lot of us have to work, and both parents have to work. And so then a child ends up, either in a daycare or childcare or maybe with a nanny, or interactions. But then, hopefully that's where you want to have that. And that all these people kind of understand that and are on the same page because then if that's the case, then hopefully, then you have a nanny or you have someone who is still understanding and knowing that these interactions and every interaction that they have, that every conversation, all the things are super important so that that child has somebody or knows still is getting that, even if it can't necessarily come from mom and dad all the time. But to know that there are, support systems
Mhm.
available in other places to be able to get that. And then school. I think school is probably the next huge vital part because just children, that's where they then go from home and spend a lot of time,
Yes.
a lot of time. Then I think that school is for the next area where really, really, as I mentioned, we need focus on that and more the social emotional as they get being able to provide those things, bringing even things like I did yoga in the classroom with my preschoolers, little ones, and with and even with some older kindergarten, second grade. And I think, keeping that and having that in school as well and that, dedicated time for that social learning and that social emotional is huge. And we need to, I think, really reinforce it. I think those systems need to really be built up. I think we're starting to gain that understanding.
Yes.
And I think we need to continue to go in that direction and put a lot of focus there because I think that is the next place where children are spending so much time. And then that's where the peer influence comes in, right? And that's where the social media, as they get older, starts to be more and more of a thing. So I think it's becoming more and more important that school really be another system really of strong social support and that social emotional support, which teachers do anyway. And I know teachers have already feel they wear so many hats, but it is really, really, really a key component. And I think putting emphasis there you could actually see it help in terms of maybe the grade challenge or the academic challenges, or the behavioral challenges that you are seeing, because you are actually then giving these children opportunity to gain these skills even more and put them into practice. And what
Yes.
better place to be able to put them into practice? I mean, in school, you're going to have all kinds of opportunities. And so because the opportunity is there, it makes sense that we would be there to also have those tools and make sure, like we're giving them the tools for math and reading and language, that these also are just as important tools
Yes.
in navigating all of that and even navigating academics.
How would you then have parents support that friendship development? Because you're right, so much of it is in school. So what can parents do to kind of help support that?
Well, I mean, as I have told parents too, and I think as we're getting back into it, obviously, I think having play dates is a great thing, is a great thing. But I also think just being able to, if you take your child to the park. and have social interaction. And again, you're modeling, right? So maybe you're in there playing and you're with your kids, and maybe there's another child that comes, you're like, oh, hi, and then you can be, oh, this is, what's your name? And again, you're modeling without forcing it. And if the child doesn't say anything and doesn't want to, say, okay, well, we're here playing. And then again, you model that, well, we're here playing if you want to play with us, and things like that. And I think that, again, is really without like forcing it. So they don't have to
Yes,
necessarily play with the child, but you are putting them in an environment where they may have that opportunity. And then to
absolutely.
be there with them, again, that modeling, you're navigating everything you're saying, all your words, even if it's like, oh, somebody's on the swing right now. Okay, so we're going to wait for our turn and then it will be our turn. I mean, all of those things are learning. I mean, they're learning so much in that. And I think that that is one of the best ways, again, for them to see it. So to provide it, to have the opportunity there, but it's not forced. Um,
Exactly. Kind of open that gate, but don't shove them through. But
exactly. You want to
very
give
good
them the
point.
opportunity and give them that chance, but yes, not force or push them because that could have, the opposite effect. And then, then they're very socially, can become very socially anxious. They don't want to. So you definitely want obviously to them to be comfortable and in a sense, but I think that yeah, just those natural opportunities or even just being out, just getting
Mhm.
having a chance to go out, and even if you're just taking a walk or stopping at a cafe or a grocery store, because those are all social interactions, right? And
Yes.
again, they're seeing you. So, oh, if you see somebody and you have to get by somebody, oh, excuse me, all of those things they're learning and they're picking up on, and you're showing them what it means to interact socially, but without saying, oh, you have to do this now.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. And then you also are seeing that so many more kids are shy or a lot more reserved or awkward. And so how can parents support those children and their social growth without labeling them shy or awkward?
Yeah, I think again, it's about, maybe just, again, putting them in that, having them be in the environment, an opportunity to practice, but not labeling, right? You don't have to label and say, oh, because a lot of times we do that too, even
Mhm.
inadvertently. We'll go, oh, are you being shy? When a child, and I think, it obviously comes from a good place. We're not trying to, it's always good intention, but I think those are the areas where we could be aware of where we don't need to label it good or bad. And people are all different, right? And, I think a lot of support comes. I'm a big believer, especially because, as I said, in being in the early childhood classroom, in books and reading and being able to learn a lot through books. And I think that books are a great, great tool for teaching because there are all kinds of stories that, are about friendship or about, how we're all different. Some of us are quiet and some of us are loud. Some of us like to run. Some
Yeah.
of us like to sit. So, we do a lot of that like in the early childhood classroom
Mhm.
just to start to, again, it's a great way to expose them and to see that like we are all different. Oh, and then they might say, oh, I like to be quiet or I like to be loud. And so then they feel a connection. And again, it's building that that we're just all different and there's not a good or a bad or a right or a wrong. And so I think that just you being, talking in using vocabulary in that way is important rather than, specifically being like, oh, you're shy. Oh, you're, it's just giving opportunities. We are different. And sometimes we might be shy, but sometimes we might not be. So I think,
Mhm.
that's the other thing is we don't want to, if you label, then I think you have more of a tendency to kind of push necessarily somebody in that direction. Whereas I think we all are much more generally malleable than that. I think it kind of is depends on the situation, depends on who we're with, depends on if it's a big group, if it's a small group. It can depend on our mood. So I think that because of that, it's better to stay away from, maybe labeling, but just, again, exposing them to all different, environments, I think is really, really key. And then, as I said, again, I think books are a great way because there's a lot of books, especially about specific things. Like if problem solving or sharing or hitting, all those things. And we use all of those books in early childhood because it's a great reinforcement for them to see see. They can see themselves. They see others. And I think that that is probably one of the best ways and one of the best teaching tools.
Absolutely. Books can help kids all of all ages. You can, yes, they are super, super vital at that younger age because you're teaching without telling them this is this or that's that. Like you're just showing them and they're taking in what they want to take in and what they feel like they need, which is so important. But you can also use books in your middle school children, your high
Oh,
school children,
yes.
and showing them like everyone goes through these types of situations. This is how you can handle it. You're not alone. And so I absolutely love that you brought up the fact that books are such a great teacher and such a good support.
You're right. Absolutely. And you're right. I like what you said there. It's about like showing that we're the humans. This is what humans do. And
Yes.
everybody, yeah, and I think that that is key. And again, that build again because we're social, and that's that key connection, right? We're humans, and we have all these things that we can do, that we feel, that we might say, and yeah, I think that's
And
really really important.
you've kind of answered this for me. And so you do really emphasize modeling, which is showing your kid by doing, which is one of the best ways to learn. But how can families create safe opportunities for kids to practice friendship skills without that pressure, without forcing connections? Um, do you have any examples maybe that would be helpful for our listeners?
To build the yeah, those skills. I think again, as you said, it's every interaction. So I think there's opportunity all the time to build those skills. So even, if it's something like building helpful skills. Oh, can you get mommy or can you get daddy the blue, the blue block over there? Can you give that to
Mm-hmm.
me? And oh, thank you. And without even teaching or saying, hey, I'm telling you how to, this is how you don't even need to do that because just
Exactly.
the interaction there, you're showing. Right. So I
Mhm.
think that any opportunity you have to kind of build those skills where the listening skills, are huge, obviously in communication so that any chance you have opportunity to build those listening skills. So obviously that means in conversation, you're listening, right? To your child, you're making sure that you show them how to be a good listener. So if they're talking to you, you're looking at them, you're listening, oh, okay, right? You're not doing something else. You're not looking at your screen. You're, you take a moment and sometimes we all need to check ourselves because, we get going and we get busy. But I think that that's kind of one of those places that also then though affects our brain, right? And rewires us because now we're parents and we're going, oh, okay, right. We're teachers now, right? So I'm teaching. And so
Yes.
we tend to stop and, and take a moment and be like, okay, everything that I'm saying right now is really important and I can help build cooperation. I can help build listening skills by you tell me, okay, now my turn. Daddy wants or mommy wants to tell you something.
Mhm.
Can you listen to what mommy wants to tell you? Right? You're taking turns. Story time, obviously. You're
Yeah.
building great listening skills. Cooperation, which obviously is very challenging, I know, with children. And sometimes we tend to do maybe better with that at school than at home. But still modeling it and working and still being like, oh, when it's clean up, oh, clean up, can you help daddy? Can you help mommy clean up? Oh, can you help? Can you give me those kinds of things are easy ways. And usually, especially at toddler ages, right? And young ages, they love being helpful. It's those little things they want to help, right? Because again, we talked about that confidence. Oh, I can do it. Look what I can do. So can you help mommy? Can you put these clothes, can you put this in the basket for me? And they love it,
Yes.
right?
Yes. Little
You
kids
could dump
love
out
to
some
learn.
dirty clothes and say, oh, I spilled it. Can you help me? We got to get them back in the basket. Right. And that's right there. Those little simple things you're building that working together, that cooperation, but without forcing it or putting it. It's like these very natural opportunities that occur all day long,
Mhm.
that we can really take advantage of to build those. And that's the relation. That's the relating, all those all day long. It doesn't have to be, I tell parents all the time, it doesn't have to be complex. It doesn't have to be complicated. The smallest, the simplest of things, even though you might feel like you're not doing much, that's it, is huge. There's so much learning in it. And that is where all that skill building can come in,
Yeah.
or you see somebody fall down, or you see a baby crying, or in the story, right? Oh, look at her face. She looks sad. She looks so sad, right? We're teaching about how to like pay attention and look at people's faces and, oh, I wonder what happened. I hope she's okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple in a book and right there, that's a way you're working to build empathy. Mm,
Yes, and you're right, like, you have so many opportunities with young kids, and it is as simple as, "Hey, can you help me?" Because they want to be involved, they wanna be part of your life. And then as kids get older, yeah, they're not necessarily like, "No, I don't wanna help you." But if
right.
you can sit down and have that conversation with a kiddo that's in middle school, that's 13, 14, 15, and they're going through this big change of like, "Oh my gosh, my world's so different, and I don't know how to make friends." I think such a good support for them as well is just having a conversation with them. It doesn't really
Absolutely.
change much when you're from 5 to 15, like, kids just wanna be heard, and so if you can sit down with them and have that conversation like, "Hey, like, how's it going today?" Or, "How was your day?" Or, "Tell me something," and if they're really reluctant, I use the thing of, "What was something funny that happened today?" Because everyone wants to tell you something funny, and it opens that door for you, and now you're teaching them these friendship skills without being like, "You need to go make friends," or, "Why don't you have friends?" You're showing them exactly like you said, by modeling, and so
Absolutely.
while you brought up so many amazing ideas for young children, these actually work for all children. And it's really
Very true.
important for parents and educators to remember that, like, a child is still a child and they just want to feel like a child too.
Absolutely. And yeah, and we're constantly, right, looking for information. And that doesn't change from when we're
Correct.
little as we grow. God, we constantly, it's the way our brain works. We're looking for that information. And so I think you're right. I think communication and conversation, especially as we get older, again, I think that's another thing that tends to kind of go, especially the teen years. Oh,
Yes.
but I think it's vitally important. And you're right. And starting young and building those makes it much easier, to consistently as they grow. And then that's a habit that they've built of like, oh, conversations and check ins. And yeah, like you say, it can be clever. It can be a weather check in. If I were a weather report today, I'm feeling sunny, but maybe with some clouds coming in,
Mhm.
and just really truly, like you said, checking in and hearing them as well. And again, even in that, you're modeling for them skills as they get older, how to navigate, how to interact with their friends, and how to, and how to deal with future. If this comes up again, it's like, okay, now I know this is what I can do.
Yeah, you're kind of building in that early support to build that self-confidence to kind of eliminate that isolation or self-doubt before it sets in. But what do you do when that kid does have that isolation or self-doubt? What support can you provide then?
Yeah, absolutely. I think for that, then it's definitely, being aware and making sure. So maybe, if they feel isolated and maybe they don't want to talk with you, then it's finding someone maybe that they do feel comfortable speaking with who's not mom or dad and outside, but being open to that and wanting that to support them and say, I understand if you don't want to talk to me, but it's really important. What you're feeling, what you're thinking is really important. So I would like to introduce you to someone that you could talk to. And mommy and daddy don't have to know what you're saying, but this is someone for you to feel comfortable speaking to. And I actually think that it's a very, very it's actually a great thing to have. I think maybe even before, it doesn't necessarily have to be if once there is a problem. I think it's
Agree.
actually something that's even better to put in place even before that happens, so that it's just, again, that habit of feeling comfortable about sharing what's going on. Be like, hey, this is how I'm feeling. I have this going on. And so then when something more challenging or harder comes up, there's not an obstacle. You've built that habit of just having conversations or being able to talk to someone or anyone. And like I said, I think, even with parents have to be able to kind of step aside and be like, okay, it's okay if it's not me. It's okay if it's not me, but it's important for me. I want to know that you have someone to talk to when you need to. And
Exactly.
so again, you're showing them and again, modeling. And I also think, I didn't say it, but modeling your friends and your friendship interactions, they see the way you interact with your friends. Right. And they're watching that relationship besides the relationship with, your mom and dad, if that's there, or mom, or any person that happens. But then they're going to see you can model with them the friends that you have, how you interact with your friends, and if you call your friends, if they hear you, hey, I just want to check on you. How are you doing? Is everything okay? Especially as those older kids, again, you're modeling for them
Yes.
really still what a friendship can and should look like.
Yeah, absolutely. You're that source for them, and just being able to have that safe and nurturing and stable relationship, whether it is with you or someone else, as long as they have those stable relationships and they're nurturing, it's definitely gonna help eliminate some of that self-doubt and that isolation.
Exactly. Like in our reading, just having at least someone. So maybe if it's not
Mhm.
home, but having some, you know, resources in the community to be able to go to, then to get that support and say, okay, my child is feeling isolated. So you know, I need some support in this and boosting her confidence in a different way or his confidence. And where can I go and get that? And we need those systems available because, yeah, parents can't do it all. And nor should you. Because again, you also are a person and a human with also, things mental health to take care of, and that's very important that we're also learning as well, right? If you are not taking care of your mental health and you are not in a good space, you have a lot less space for your children or for anyone else, or for anybody else because we just can't balance that as well. And so I think that's another key part of having community support and other resources is that parents need that, right, to not burn out, because when they're burnt out and exhausted and overwhelmed, then obviously the interactions are going to suffer. All of it is going to
Yes.
suffer. What you're being able to provide for them is going to suffer. And so knowing that you're not alone in doing this and having the ability or the support from school or support from school staff to say, hey, I noticed this. What if we tried? What if we did this? What if we, having just a whole team that is there for your child is a huge, huge, huge relief, and something that I feel like we could do a lot better.
Yeah, I completely agree, and you even see it in, like, the study that I wanted to we keep talking about is this Harvard study. You see so much of it is saying, like, you need a healthier brain development, you need to learn how to handle the stress and allow yourself to go through these things and become resilient, as you've been saying, and it allows you to become better mentally and physically, in the long term, and that's so important, and it is the building blocks of who we are.
Absolutely, and I think it's very. Um, I think, the social emotional, again, that is a huge part of it, and that mental health. And even, I think a support system for all the people, right, who are a part of raising children is also vital. And I think that's where we suffer too, because then we ask a lot of our schools and our teachers, but they don't have the support necessarily to do all of that. And they're exhausted and they're burnt out and they are overwhelmed. So obviously then their interactions with their students, the way they teach, everything is impacted by that. And so I think bringing in these supports and social emotional is a huge component for everyone, for the adults involved too, because it is a key part of it. So for instance, I got my yoga certification through a
Mhm.
program that was called Breathe for Change that is designed for educators. And it was designed by an educator, a former teacher who was getting her PhD. She was going to doing her PhD. She was actually looking at the effectiveness of DEI programs and how effective teachers were being in implementing these DEI programs in San Francisco, where she was from, and in the classroom, and how successful they were being. And what ended up happening is she went in to, do her study, then research, and what she kept finding more and more, and that actually she then shifted her thesis or her doctorate or thesis to was that it was the mental health of the educators that was impacting how effective the curriculum was.
Yes.
right? And that all the ones who were, they were feeling overwhelmed. This is too much. This is something else that's on my plate. I can't get it. I can't get it in. And so they were feeling overwhelmed and burnt out. And that was affecting how well they were able to teach and share this curriculum and how successful it was. And when the teachers who had more opportunity, that were supported in their mental health and their mental wellness, then the impact of the curriculum was much more effective. And so then she started looking at, sort of the educators' mental health and social emotional health and how that directly is related to the social emotional health in the classroom and what they're able to bring. And so what this program does is it's specifically designed for teachers to get their yoga certification and to learn how to also bring it into the classroom, and in a way that was very inclusive, trauma informed, because you are within a school, you're dealing with so many different children and all different backgrounds, all different
Yes.
experiences, many who are experiencing adverse childhood experiences, and you're dealing with such a range. And so a trauma informed way, but this is a self regulation. Yoga is so good. Breathing, bringing in social emotional wellness, breathing tools into the classroom, taking a breathing break, as simple as 5 minutes, doing some flower breaths to be able to get settled before doing work. And it's hugely impactful for the children because, again, you're modeling, you're teaching, you're giving them opportunity you know, to self regulate. So you're teaching them all those skills, but also for the teacher, it's hugely vital to be able to take a moment, to be able to breathe, to be able to also kind of settle your emotional in your regulation system so that you are teaching in a much more impactful way.
Yeah, I absolutely love how you brought up the mental health of the educator or the teacher or whomever it may be plays such a vital role in these children, and it is part of their core learning. And you're right, if I'm overstimulated, how is my kid or how am I supposed to expect them to be regulated? How am I expect them to learn or have an optimal learning space? And so it is really important that we are modeling behavior for kids. We are showing them how to show up and how to make friends and keep friends and show empathy or even show them like, hey, these friends aren't for me. Like that's also super important role to show. And so thank you so much for sharing all of your wealth of knowledge. It's been amazing talking to you. And I just want to thank
Likewise.
yeah. I wanna thank everyone else for spending this time with us on Willow Kids Podcast. If today's conversation sparked a new idea, gave you reassurance, or simply made you pause and reflect, like, we'd love for you to carry that into your week and into your lives of the children you support. You can always learn more about Willow Kids' upcoming programs and outgrowing community by visiting us online. And if you've enjoyed this episode, please consider subscribing or sharing it with someone who cares deeply about education and childhood growth. Until next time, keep nurturing curiosity, keep asking thoughtful questions, and remember, strong roots grow lifelong learners.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me today, Caitlin. I really appreciate it.
Of course, it was a pleasure talking to you, Danielle.
Likewise. Thank you so much.